What if you could guarantee that tomorrow would be better than today? That the work you're doing will have an impact, not just in this moment or in this year, but a true and lasting legacy of positive change? What if you had the ability to inspire those around you to make the world a better place? To right the wrongs, to address injustice, and to celebrate and amplify the good that happens every day. There are millions of people who want to be part of change, but just haven't been asked. They're out there. We're sure of it. How does it feel to make a gift that changes the world? Well, magical. We're building technology to help donors support the organizations that they love the most. Whether you give a little or you give a lot, your impact is felt. And together, we can make tomorrow better than today. We're version 2, and we're reinventing technology that reimagines what's possible in fundraising.
The role of Ryan Catherwood today. He usually is the one who does the welcome, but it's going to be me because Ryan is at a client site and could not get out, and I'm joined by our very special guest. Merry Christmas, Kim Infanti. How are you?
Where are all of your festive, where's your festive attire, Chris? I'm a little disappointed. This
I
is
went
the
with
holiday
purple today because I had a
episode.
purple-colored client this morning I was meeting with. So
Well, I have a 5-year-old's Christmas concert after this, a sing-along at school. So therefore, I'm dressed like Buddy the Elf for
Buddy the Elf.
our
Love
holiday
it.
special.
Love it. Well, thanks, everyone, for joining us live. And then for those that are listening, this is Alumless for December 19th, 2025. This is our special holiday edition on the future of alumni engagement technology. I'm Chris. That is Kim. Kim is the Executive Director of Alumni and Constituent Engagement at Syracuse University, but we're moonlights with CMAC on the side as our digital growth specialist. And Kim, so a 5-year-old sing-along concert. I had Rudolph Red-Nosed Reindeer 3 shows last weekend for my now 13-year-old daughter. What else on the radar coming up for the holidays?
Well, my parents are rolling into town on Sunday.
Right.
I always say my mom comes with her white gloves, and the house has to be in pristine condition. So that'll be tomorrow's task to
Love it. I
get the
love it.
house mom ready. And I'm going to work early next week and then take off from Christmas Eve until January 5th. So
Good for you.
I don't know about you, but I am counting down
Yeah.
until break and very ready for.
Everybody is. All of you out there who are sending me the last emails before the Friday ends, thank you. I'm sending them back, trying to get them off of my plate too, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. This is Alumless, and we talk about constituent engagement strategies and educational advancement. We are live today. So if you're on LinkedIn, I'm going to try to join in and multitask here and follow who's on so we can say hello. But give us a shout out. Let us know if you're here, where you're from. If you have a question for the panel or for me or for Kim, fire it away and we'll try to get it in. If you listen to the podcast, we appreciate you joining the feed, and we're grateful to the teams at Protopia, AlumnIQ, and Givzey for being our Alumnus presenting sponsors for our Season 4, Episode 87. I was just working with Ryan on our spring upcoming guests and on that, and we realized that in July of 26 we'll have our 100th episode. So
Wow.
Yeah, it's real. 4 years of this. It's been really cool. Start with a question for you, if I could. When you think about 2025, how would you describe the current state of alumni engagement technology?
So I gave this some thought, and the first word that came to mind, and we'll talk about this later, and a question for Steve, is disjointed. So I think, unfortunately, we're still in a place where some of the technology solutions are still disjointed, but I'd say that there's promise on the horizon. So I think we're starting to have more conversations about how disjointed they really are. And I know, like at Syracuse, we're starting, the kickoff call is next Tuesday at 2:00. So we're surely going to be locked in a strategic technology review group to really think about all of our solutions and how they talk to each other and what we want, like chart a course moving forward. So we shall see. But I know you, Chris, obviously you talk to a lot of advancement tech folks and shops across the country and really the world. What are you seeing in terms of their tech stacks? Would you say similar, disjointed, or are you seeing they're starting to get a little better?
For a long time, what I saw in our industry is that people try to find a tool that would solve multiple problems. In fact, I would even argue that there was a lot of times people would just buy a tool because they were afraid of missing out on, the old FOMO of not
Yeah.
having the technology. So there's a lot of that went on in our industry. I think it still goes on today. I think there's been a trend towards trying to find a one-size-fits-all solution with multiple, an event solution, a volunteer management solution, a giving solution, a day of giving solution, an AI solution, and all that. And what I'm starting to see, and more schools are doing, is figuring out really what the problem is they're trying to solve, and
Yeah.
finding a solution that best solves that problem. And then you get into this, multiple tools solving the problems that they solve, but then they're not connected to each other. They don't talk to the CRM, or they're disjointed, as you said. And so I think we're in this mode right now where we're waiting for sort of a fix for all of it, but I'm not sure we're going to find it. So we're going to have to find a way, I think. And we have experts on here who can tell us more about it. This is our largest guest list ever, all at once on a Alumless. So thank you so much for doing this and being willing to muscle through a large panel here. But today's special guests are Max Leisten, founder and CEO of Protopia, Renee Quinn, Director of Sales and Partnerships at Version 2 AI at Givzey, and Steve Rittler, founder and CEO of AlumnIQ. Welcome. Hello, everybody. So I'm going to start with a question for Max, and let's get right into it, Max. All right. Do you think technology adoption and higher education advancement lags other industries, and if so, why?
Yeah, so first of all, thanks for doing this. I get this a lot that, people saying higher education moves slower than anybody else. I don't think it's actually speed. I think it's when you look at an industry that makes widgets, it's easy to make a change, right? Because it's low risk, you get a different system, and you make widgets faster. Higher education is a human business, especially advancement. So when you're dealing with fundraising and you're dealing with humans, every slip up can impact that pipeline. So they're naturally more cautious. They need to be more cautious. I think so. That's one element, right? Higher education shouldn't beat itself up. There's a reason to be slow and considerate when adopting new technology because of the impact on sustainability. I think the other part for me is also that we tend to see that collaboration across campus actually accelerates that innovation, right? So teams, from our perspective, where advancement works with alumni, let's say it's an integrated shop, advancement works with career services, the speed is actually pretty good. Right? I think those teams should pat themselves on the back that they're moving at the right speed. Now, innovation always could be faster, but I don't think, again, it's something where education always lacks. It is inherently a really sensitive area, if that makes sense.
Yeah, for sure. I'm going to go off script because I always do, Kim, and just ask Steve and Renee for quick answers to the same question. If you had to give a 30-second shot clock answer on, do you think technology adoption is slower, same, or faster in higher ed? Renee.
So I'm comparing from, higher education compared to direct service nonprofits. That's how my mind is thinking right now. And I do think higher education is at the forefront of adoption of, some of these technologies. At least we see that from the artificial intelligence standpoint. But that's my 30-second pitch, just based
All right, we'll get more, Renee.
Yeah.
We'll another one follow up for you. What's the biggest misconception you hear from advancement leaders about AI in fundraising?
Yeah, I think oh my gosh, I could spend 60 minutes talking about this. I think that one of in the earlier days of, artificial intelligence and advancement is that we always went back to that relational experience, that fundraising is relational. But I think that just looking at the data from a year ago, 365 days ago, and I think it was a recent survey by Exploding Topics shows that more than 50% of your donors are happily using artificial intelligence and are using it more than they were just a year ago. And so I think we need to embrace that. I think there's obviously a lot of trust building there, understanding, being transparent, but our donors are using this, our prospects are using this technology. And so we need to understand that we're in a place now where we can confidently adopt this technology, again, with the transparency, but confidently adopt this. And one of the other things here at version 2 is our highest engagement engagement segmentation or population is between the ages of 50 and 72 with our
Wow.
virtual engagement officers. I think that's also a misconception that just younger alumni are engaging with this technology. And that is really not the case. I think we're seeing a demographic of all ages, engaging with artificial intelligence. And we also have a lot of, some of those qualitative and quantitative data points to support that.
Awesome. I definitely want to dive more. I'm a huge AI gal here at Syracuse, but really only started using it in the last year. So brand new for me. But I want to jump over to Steve, and it plays into what I talked about when we kicked this off, that we talk about these systems just not talking to each other, like the disjointedness that you see in advancement technology. So when I say that, like, what comes to mind for you? And do you think we are any closer on solving this massive vendor palooza and nobody talks to each other? But I think what Steve was saying, it's just the under-resourced advancement services shops. And I think that's a really, really valid point. While we make sure that Steve's Wi-Fi comes back online, I want to start with Renee, and then I'll go to Max. Let's talk about engagement data. Here at Syracuse, we've done engagement scoring. Do you think that teams are better using engagement data to influence their strategy for fundraising? Or do you think that those two, in the spirit of disjointedness, those are still an aspiration? Renee, I'll start with you.
Yeah, let's take this back to what Steve was mentioning earlier, staffing. If you think about your staffing structure and the labor shortage that we have, not just in frontline fundraising, but in advancement services, first, what can we do with this information? Like these engagement data metrics. Case is still, a huge indicator, but we use a lot of case-defined metrics here for engagement. I know a lot of higher education institutions to this day do, but then what do you do with it? And a lot of times it takes humans to power our next steps, our strategies around this. And so a lot of our partners, what we're seeing is that they're leveraging digital labor for these donors that don't necessarily, or they're highly engaged, but they're not necessarily ready to be in a human gift officer portfolio or a lag portfolio potentially. And so trying to engage them even more through digital labor. And specifically, when you think about, at least in my opinion, when I'm a former frontline fundraiser for the last 15 years of my career, I always think about engagement and back to basics. I know that sounds simple, but it's how can we leverage technology to go back to basics, to use that information to then do a moves management journey with a donor that might not necessarily be ready to be in a human portfolio. And so look like, and trying to dive a little bit deeper, be realistic around what you actually can do with those alumni that are engaged, that's worth, the ROI, the time, the resources, and so forth.
And Max, what do you think on that? The engagement data to influence fundraising. We talk about this a lot on our
We
calls.
do, right? I know we talk a lot about. So first of all, to Renee's point, I want to give a shout out to Case. We're big fans to the EAM metrics, right? At least having a common language of what engagement data is. And the other shout out is to Chris and Ryan. Return on engagement is something I use all the time. For me, it's a little bit that data is more related to reporting, and I use the word signals. I think that's what teams need to focus on: micro events, signals, getting down to the very slowest, the smallest events an alum can do, and then be able to act on that more in real time. I think those two pieces are going to be very important. One of the things I know that Kim, you and I talk about is fundraiser alerts. Right? How do you get a fundraiser alerted of something meaningful that they can act on right in the moment, which we're big fans of?
Yeah. So we're going to take a quick break here and play an ad from one of our sponsors. I want to, before we do it, Dustin, let me shout out, Max, you brought up a great point. I'm going to shout out to Jenny Cook-Smith at Case. She's a rock star in this space, and the number of schools that are submitting data into Case is too low. So my plug is, if you're on this or listening to this later on, get your data in. It's basic. It's the starting point. It's not perfect, but get it in so we can learn and build on it, right? That's my plug. But let's go to our ad, and we'll come back and pick it up with, I have a question for Kim.
You can't manage what you don't measure.
100% agree.
Yep.
Meet AlumnIQ, the only all-in-one platform built exclusively for higher education. From everyday events and email outreach to online giving, directories, membership management, and seamless integrations, AlumnIQ helps institutions connect, engage, and inspire. Handling major reunions or homecomings? AlumnIQ's signature events service has you covered with rules-based registration, name tag printing, real-time reporting, and giving integration. Visit alumniq.com to request a demo and start making meaningful connections today.
But Kim, let me throw one out at you. So how do you see the concept of engagement scores in our current moment, and how are schools thinking about them?
I think for us at Syracuse, we obviously had engagement as one of the goals of our campaign. That campaign's over. And we're thinking about simplifying them. So we got pretty intense in terms of what we were measuring and how much things were weighted and which points got this. And it was a lot. And I won't pretend to know how the sausage was made in terms of the actual score going into the system.
Sometimes it's over-analysis. It's the simple is the best, right?
Yeah. So I really think schools are just, at Syracuse, we're talking about doing a slice of an orange and there's 4 little pieces or 4 slices. And have you done the thing in volunteer? Have you done the thing in give? Have you done the thing for digital engagement? Great, fill in your last slice. And then and that's like sharing basically engagement scoring with our alumni, which we didn't do in the campaign. We didn't tell them we were scoring, but maybe there's some gamification to come from this. Like you're missing one of the slices of your orange.
Yeah.
Like, would you consider making a gift on giving day? So I think simpler is better. I think a lot of schools felt like we have to do this and we have to do it perfectly. And now we're dialing it back and getting a little simpler. Do you think that's the case from the schools you talked to? Simple?
Yeah, I do. And what, again, most places that we work with, we force them to do it. But again, if you look at it on average across all institutions, they're not doing it. And so getting to a point where they do something and get it out. The key to it, though, it was already been talked about. Several people mentioned this, is that what do you do with it once you have the data? How do you use it to make strategic decisions? That takes people, that takes, thoughtful consideration, all the things that we don't have a lot of time for because we're going from thing to thing to thing to thing. I'm thinking about Ryan's article he just posted on the 4 horsemen of alumni engagement. And one of my responses is we're too busy to be strategic sometimes. We're just going from thing to thing. So I think slowing down, being simple, using the data in a meaningful way to make some decisions with. Let me bring in Renee and Max if we could. So and ask a question about AI here and how AI is changing what's possible for alumni engagement teams right now. Not someday, but today.
Yeah, I want to just go back to some of the things you guys were talking about. I think, from the staffing perspective, you're going to hear me talk about that all day, every day.
Yeah,
We
I love
really
it.
are struggling in the staffing part. But I think that there's a real difference that needs to be clear out in the world that, AI enablement is very different than, say, AI agents, autonomous fundraising, what we're doing here. So I'm specific to that. But I think we need to understand that artificial intelligence in the enablement side takes adoption. Again, going back to that staffing part, how much time do we have in a day to really leverage this? All critical piece, we all should be using AI enablement tools. I'm sure many of us, all of us on this call are watching. But then how can we do more in that frontline fundraising space? Because I think when it comes to alumni engagement teams and how they're adopting this is that it's more of that one-to-many. And how can we bring that down to that one-to-one, like personalized engagement? We did a survey back in the springtime, and this was hosted by us, but less than 3% of donors and prospects actually have a relationship manager, someone that is, again, going back to basics, simple in the team that's just writing to them and, hoping they have, a great birthday or, reaching out to say, hi, it's graduation weekend. I'm sure that, you're reminiscing about your time graduating on campus. Those things are really challenging to do at scale unless you're using autonomous fundraising and some of the other AI tools out there that are different in adoption. But anyway, I just think that there is this opportunity to leverage, and people are leveraging AI and autonomous fundraising right now to ensure that our donors are getting that one-to-one experience at scale. And we'll get into this question a little bit later around personalization and what does that mean? We talk about that all the time, personalization. But I do think that there's a critical piece here of responsiveness acting that we cannot do as a human team anymore because we have far too many donors than we can possibly engage in that way. How can we be adopting autonomous fundraising to help us do that at scale? And so I think that's one of those things, those alumni stories that we need to start capturing and then responding to quickly.
Obviously, I've got a super strong opinion on AI. We've now used, right? We have used machine learning now since 2019. For me, AI lets people do more with less, right? Resource is always a challenge. Carrie Jones at the London School of Economics said 2 years ago to me, AI makes the impossible possible. And I think that's really the part, the scalability, right? And the example I often go back to is that so many schools have and want to do mentoring, but the fact that it's manual and labor intensive constrains that to a small group of students and alumni, and it's a lot of work. And for us, that is actually the area where AI can really shine, making it scalable, inclusive for everyone, and then deliver those micro volunteer moments. So AI is just a tool, but it's also a tool that amplifies human relationships. And mentoring for me is a great example where schools often say, oh, wow, maybe we should do it different now that technology is here.
So I have often said that if I were back at an alumni shop, I would adopt AlumnIQ and Protopia out of the gate as my event solution and my connection with alum, not mentoring, but a career focused, ask an alum a question kind of thing with Protopia. I think they're both fantastic products, but I was skeptical about all the Givzey stuff, to be totally honest with you, until this summer in July, when I attended the Washburn McGoldrick conference in New York City, and Adam was there speaking, had a panel of users. So as he's speaking, I'm realizing what a narrow-minded view of things for me to not really adopt it, because as you said, 3% of our folks have a relationship manager, 97% don't, obviously. But there's, at the best situation, you're going to have at a liberal arts college, small, private, where you have, lots of connections. You're lucky if you're going to get 50%. I mean, the high watermark in this, in terms of engaged alumni, is Davidson, and they're about 2/3 of their alumni every year are connected to the place. So that's the high watermark. Still meaning 1/3 of their alums aren't connected, and that's a small, private, liberal arts. A large public school, it's going to be more like 2/3 of their population. And my takeaway from that session was, why not use your tool to engage that population? We're not getting them anyway. What's the chance of doing more damage? Is that where you guys are sort of tackling the market now? And Max, jump in after if you don't mind. Renee, go ahead.
I'm so grateful to have a tiny window to talk about that, because I, again, was a frontline fundraiser by trade for the last 15 years of my career. And I could understand why people could enter this conversation, not understanding the technology, not understanding the donor perception data that we have. But first, we have to be really, really, and this is me on a soapbox, have to be really honest with ourselves, very, very honest. Because I would walk into meetings a year ago when version 2 just came out. We had our first R&D partners, leveraging the VEO portfolio of 1,000 donors. And I would walk into meetings and they're like, well, we're a really close knit community here. Smaller liberal arts school and independent school. We're really, really close knit here. They would only want to work with, our human team. And I would say, no, absolutely. That sounds great. But let's crunch your numbers. Okay. You've got 50,000 living alumni. Maybe 1,000 of them are under relationship management in those portfolios. What are the rest getting? What are the 49,000 after that getting? And their reply would be, mass emails, we do great with segmentation. And so it's okay, let's be honest with ourselves. Is that close, is that feeling, or is this just we just have to understand that, artificial intelligence can be leveraged in this way. It is a conduit between your organization and the donor. It's not trying to be a human gift officer. It's really just trying to be that in between to connect them. And now I don't hear this at all. I think that people, similar to you, Chris, over the summer, over the past couple of months, I walk into meetings all the time and people are like, no, we desperately need this because all we are doing is mass communication. And then of course those alumni are engaged, but how can we expand that surface area of luck? All of the great engagement stuff we're doing now with the technologies is incredible. It's even night and day from when I was in higher ed. But how can we do that one-to-one that feels very much like a gift officer? But yeah, no, I agree. I think we ran into that a lot, but not anymore. And trust is so critical.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
as long as you're transparent, I think that people are really, the wheels are turning now and they're seeing that it's really working. And so anyway, I appreciate that moment to just talk about that briefly.
Yeah, thanks for letting me go off script. Max, follow up though, because your product allows you to get to the student and to the alum to talk to each other. I love that about it. Share your thoughts here.
Yeah, first of all, I want to give a shout out to Adam and the team, right? Challenging the status quo and using AI in a way that helps higher education. To your point, that's important. Going back to the very first question on the speed with which higher education adopts technology, the gap is getting wider because technology is evolving faster. So really innovative shops need to challenge status quo and do things differently. From my perspective, as you know, Chris, I often get the challenge, right? This is how we've always done it. That's how we're going to do it versus the price you pay, right? From our side, it is mentoring typically touches a very small number of students, those with already high social capital. And I often say networking actually can help you touch everyone. What's there to lose by supporting all students, alumni? Because again, that's really what you should be doing. But I'm a big fan of that.
Yeah. Just a quick note from our other guest, Steve Rittler. The storm, it's not a tech issue for him. He's going to send me something to read on his behalf around this topic. But
I
the
feel
storm,
for him.
I know,
Right?
and he's a
That's
pretty
terrible.
high-tech guy.
Really, the
But
first
the storm
question I
there has
answered,
just knocked out everything. So he's got nothing
Yeah.
right now. And he just sent me a long, I'll read it during the break here, and I'll come back with Steve's comments on all this. But let's take a break here and play an ad for our other sponsor. Let's go ahead and take it away.
Amy loved her college years. Varsity basketball, student leadership, lifelong friendships. But life got busy, and over time, she drifted away from her alma mater. Then, an email changed everything. A student, just like she once was, needed advice. It wasn't a donation ask. It wasn't a long-term commitment. Just a chance to help. Amy answered, suggesting a call. It took minutes, but for Jacqueline, it meant everything. A real connection. The advancement team saw Amy was engaged. They reached out, not for a gift, but to thank her, to invite her back into the community. Amy realized how much she missed being part of this world. She joined a panel. She met students. She felt the impact she could have. And when the time came, giving back wasn't a question. It felt like the next step. This is the power of Protopia. Not another alumni engagement platform. Not another fundraising tool. A smarter way to engage alumni where they are, creating real connections that lead to real impact. See the ripple effect in action. Visit protopia.co today.
We are back. I'm going to go to the question I was supposed to ask Kim before we went to that commercial, which was, Kim, we have a long list of guests coming up, but what's next on Alumless for us? We're going to stay live right through this whole hour, but during the coming out of the break, what's coming up next?
Well, I texted Ryan this morning, so hot off the presses. We're going to take a little pause, a little holiday pause, but January 16th will be an Alumless Takes. That's our little snippet of UC Berkeley. So January 16th, mark your calendars for that. And then January 23rd will be Ashley Watts from Georgia State. So 2 great guests in January, but a little pause for the holidays and a little downtime for you and Ryan.
Yep. And all these episodes are available on whatever your favorite podcast thing is. Go there and you'll find all 87 of them available to you. Let's keep going on.
And we kind of dipped our toe into this, but the whole concept of how do you do one-to-one engagement at scale with that whole concept of, but it's my alma mater, like I want a relationship. This has to be meaningful. I don't want to talk to robots. I want to talk to a human. So let's dive into that question again, Renee.
I do kind of go back to that math. I think like having open conversations about the technology you're using too, how it's going to expand your bandwidth, like help your team build capacity, allow them to have that curated, again, not just personalized, but curated experience with your institution. But we can't do this without technology. They're using technology in their day-to-day. They know struggles with staffing. And so I think there's a lot of honest conversations that need to be had. And And we always encourage our partners when they're deploying a virtual engagement officer to write to those 1,000 alumni. Be very clear, this is what we're using. This is why we think it's going to help us. It's going to keep you closely connected to our mission, but we're here. We're still here. We're still able to connect with you. And I think that anything you can do to streamline and automate those back to basic type of engagements. Again, those graduation questions, forwarding an event invitation to say, hey, just wanted to make sure you saw that. How can we use technology to engage alums in that one-to-one way? And I think it's an answer that I have on down the line, but really defining what personalization means. I think baseline now, I think I heard someone the other day, maybe a week or so ago, say, we're merging everyone's name in. We're not saying dear alum or dear friend. I'm like, of course you're not. And that's that's baseline, knowledge that we should be doing. And what does personalization look like at scale? And so defining that, what that means for you. But I do think, going back to that transparency, making sure that, we're doing 12 moves management touches, throughout the year with every donor, not just, the $1 million donor, but the $25 donor and what that looks like instead of, sending 4 solicitations on giving days and so forth. But I think we're doing a really great job at this, but I think there's so much more we could be doing to expand that surface area of luck in those small, micro touches that are meaningful to the donor.
I love that you have the background you have because you understand how it applies in the world of advancement. You talk the talk and you understand how this will walk the walk. The next question in our script was for Steve, and he gave me a response I will read. I'll try to do my best Steve imitation. And the question was, where do you see the biggest gap between what's possible from a technology standpoint and what schools are actually implementing? It's roughly the answer to this question, I think, but let me preface it by saying Steve is one of the more advanced technological people I've ever met in my life. If I ever needed a translation, he was always my BS detector. If I needed to translate something from tech speak to real world speak, Steve was the guy who helped me do it. So he's brilliant in this world, but he's also more of a skeptic on the AI front, and he's a slower adopter of it and more cautious and worried about it. So that is a preface. I'm going to read to you what he wrote me. So he said, humans make meaning. I'm guarded when it comes to thinking about how far AI should move into human meaning deriving institutions like higher education. The more advancement in fundraising leans on nostalgia for lived experience as a means to an end that includes a gift, and rightfully so, the less comfortable I am about using machine output to manipulate. If AI is meant to help us become wiser to the world around us, and in so doing empower us to improve it, I don't believe that AI in its current form, nor the move fast and break things approach that the industry is bringing along with it, is going to be any better for us than social media has been to date. You can only put guardrails where a road has been planned. Moving at this speed is detrimental, and I don't think institutions should be embracing the risk as quickly as they are. So I love, it's pretty, for a technology-driven, brilliant tech person to have that posture towards this is an interesting response. So I love Max, Renee, why don't you respond and share your reaction to that statement?
I'm really sorry Steve is not here because I would have loved to hear that from you. And I think it's 100% right. Like I shared earlier, AI is an enabler. And it's an enabler and amplifier of human connections. That's what higher education is about. And so I tend to agree, although there's some really good AI-generated cat videos. Let's just be honest. There's some great content, right? But in the end of the day, the true north is the human relationship. So, and AI can help with that. I think that's how we've talked about it.
I think that's a really fascinating response. And again, I would love for Steve to be here too, just to have some dialogue. That would be really fun. But I will share with you that, yes, we are never in our work are pinning a virtual engagement officer against a human. We are never acting as if it is a human. It is an AI powered, I think they introduced themselves as, my name is Grace, a virtual engagement officer powered by artificial intelligence, here to help you just stay closely connected to what's going on. And so I kind kind of challenge all of us in the sector to think about, like, what is the cost of just not being there for them? Like, if we're not going to use the technology because we're fearful of, some of those concerns that Steve had mentioned, what is like the cost of just doing nothing? And I also just want to comment on the fact that we are in the crawling stages. Adam talks about this all the time. We are in the crawling stages of agentic AI. We have human oversight on the version 2 team for any outbound replies back to a donor. That's really important to note because they're learning. We're developing the knowledge base every day. Like, our mission is that we are currently building the world's most experienced frontline fundraiser powered by AI.
Right.
And so I think that there is still this moment of, today is the worst day for agentic AI. Tomorrow will be a little bit better and a little bit better. And so the transparency is critical, and that is there. And I think that's one thing we have to note, but then kind of thinking inwardly and what is the cost of doing nothing with those 1,000, 10,000 donors in that way? And you should see some of the engagements, just asking questions around, are there any opportunities for mentorship at my alma mater? Like, they're texting the virtual engagement officer in that way, and they're replying back and sending a link, to learn a little bit more. Can I connect you with someone on the team to learn a little bit more? There is always that human element to assist there. But, and I just want to correct something earlier. The 50 to 72 age bracket, they are the highest engaged population in terms of wanting to share stories, wanting to need resources. They need help, with finding something on a website or something.
Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Thanks.
So so we have 30-year-olds and 25-year-olds that are engaging with this just as much. But I think that population just seems to they've never been in a portfolio before. They never had that one-to-one relationship management. That's why they're here. And so for someone to ask them, what their experience was like when they found out they were accepted to institution X, they're like thrilled to be able to say, oh my gosh, I have a twin sister and she got accepted the same day. And it was like a wild day for our family. And I don't know, like, no one, they just want to be seen and want to be heard. And that always goes back to the institution, the humans on the team. So I think there's that human element that remains.
Well, I'm going to jump in and ask Max to look into his crystal ball for 2026 and how you see the digital behaviors of the alumni that we serve changing in the year ahead. And Renee kind of touched on it with more embracing, like not questioning the whole virtual engagement officer. But what are you thinking?
I'll go back to the recent Crystal Apple winner, Josh Harriman, right? Right, where he said attention spans are shrinking. He talked about that video, and I think you're not going to be shocked to hear that that's going to get worse. I think all of attention spans. You're probably listening to this podcast and doing one other thing at a minimum right now, because that's who we are. So from my side, I think you need to think about the attention span, how to serve alumni, recognizing those attention spans, micro mentoring, micro volunteering, simplicity, go to where they already are, minimize the time and commitment the alumni have to make. I think that's going to be even more important. But I think Josh said the average video was now 62 seconds. It's probably going to be 45 seconds by the end of next year, and then down to 30 seconds.
Yeah. Yep. And if it's 5 seconds, it's better for me.
Right? Exactly.
I'm going to, I have a final Steve response, and we'll let him off the hook completely. But let me go back to Renee and ask you this. Where do we stand with social media, and how should advancement shops be thinking about these social channels?
So I want to put a disclaimer out there. I am by no means a social media expert, but what I will share with you as a consumer of social media and, so all the things I'm following is that we as nonprofit organizations, higher education institutions really need to start looking at our donors and alumni as consumers. Obviously admissions, it's very similar in that space, but, and when you think about that, and I did a little bit of research before this, obviously video is critical, and consistency, just posting and sharing. But then you're really at the mercy of the algorithm and what they see. And so we always, our virtual engagement officers will send out social media posts, like push them out to people via text message and via email so that it drives traffic back. But what I will share with us as like in other forms of technology is that how can we be pushing our social media to people? Again, those one-to-one touches, how can we do that at scale with some of our technology? But I would say for lag officers, for annual giving officers, for everyone, how can we get our social media in front of people? But video, I've heard is all the rage. And we're seeing that at version 2 at Givzey. But then also consistency. We have to remain consistent in 2026 with social media. It can't just be one day and then 3 days later you're posting something else. And it needs to be multiple times a day and repurposing some really great content in different channels.
So Max and then Kim, answer that same question. How should advancement shops be thinking about social channels in 26?
Personalization, from my perspective, I think that matters, right? It's never been easier to create social content and publish it out there. Like I think you said, we all love these AI generated videos, and so I think we're going to get probably a little more jaded unless it's actually relevant to me and personalized to me. You're going to see a lot more of that.
Stop overthinking it. I was at our we had a holiday at Hendrix, which is our campus chapel event last week, and I took a video of our chorus singing Silent Night. It exploded on social media. Do you know how much planning I did about, I didn't plan anything. I was like, gee, I'm here. This sounds beautiful. I should take a video. Whereas other times we've spent months planning content and we hear crickets. So think about what, it is Christmas or Hanukkah or holiday season. What are alumni thinking about? Oh, Silent Night sounds good. Post it. Great. It is our highest performing post. That's above basketball, Syracuse basketball of all time. And it was a 30-second snippet that zero planning. So that's my advice. And LinkedIn is seeing its heyday. I think LinkedIn is where alumni are. It's where they're sharing their information. We've got our company page now. We really want to build that up. But I think that, people are starting to really move off of Twitter or X, whatever it's called today. And video is starting to be more embraced in LinkedIn. So we're stopping the overthinking and we're embracing LinkedIn, at least here.
Yeah, but I think one thing also that's important here is the authenticity, right? You shared a real human moment.
Yeah.
I think that people want to see that.
Right.
For Max, let me throw it back to you. What are the qualities of a digital first advancement organization in 26?
I think the social media is one of the elements we just talked about, right? I think reflecting what Kim just said, grabbing these moments, the human moments, reminding the alumni and students of that community, I think it's absolutely important. To Steve's point a little bit, don't just automate everything with AI because it's just an enabler, right? And to Renee's point, look at the areas you don't even serve today. But I think that's going to be really important. This is a human business. Don't necessarily chase the shiny light bulb and automate what you can, but always think about the human element. That's going to be more important than ever.
I'm going to have Renee answer that same question. Qualities of a digital first advancement organization.
Yeah, I think you're going to hear trends from me. That personalization at scale. I know Max has touched on this many times, but what does personalization truly mean this day and age? It's not just, adding someone's name to an email. It's really getting granular, and there are technologies that can help you do that at scale. And so thinking through, what does that mean to your institution? And then, really understanding that consistency piece, but making donors feel seen, feel heard, and how can we continue to evolve that feeling and that sense of community and understanding of, just again, having their thoughts be seen or their, ideas be, again, heard. And so that's what I really think about, qualities of a digital first advancement shop. It's a very human, relational based industry, but this digital first advantage is that you can do a lot more at scale.
I just think the best advancement organizations will remember the audience of the digital output that we are putting out there into the world. I think so often we think about what works for us or how to please our partners in the school college unit or, and we're not thinking about the audience on the receiving end, and this 45-year-old alumna in Chicago who's trying to cook dinner and plan a, kid's birthday party for the weekend and has a husband who works really late. And this sounds an awful lot like me. I'm not 45. But like, how do you catch the attention of alumni like that and remind them that they're hearing, whether it's coming from this school or it's coming from this unit or it's coming from the central shop, like it's at the end of the day, their institution, their alma mater, and it sounds similar and it feels like that they are known and they're seen. And we've said that a lot. So recognizing who your audience is and just the stop the overthinking and just back to basics. And a lot of the themes that we've talked about through this podcast, to me, that's critically important. I also think people are yearning to be not so connected to this thing. Like I bought myself a Christmas present. It's a brick, so I can make my phone only work as a phone. And I think some of the in-person experiences, while still recognizing there's a place for virtual, and the shops who forgot that after COVID, that's not so good either. So there is a place for virtual, but that in-person connectivity that we don't get from this dumb thing that's dinging all the time, I think that's huge too. So remembering you can be digital first, but that relationships and humans matter. So
I'm gonna take a shot, a little different spin on this same question and share where I think this is and why it's important. I'll bridge it with the earlier conversation around alumni engagement metrics. If you look at the 4 case categories, let's take out communications just for a second. And the original 3, the old Go Give Help model in alumni engagement, and now it's Go Give Help Connect, we call it in the shorthand. But in the old Go Give Help model, the lowest percentage of alums who were engaged with the institutions was on the volunteer side, usually somewhere between 2 and 4%. I've seen them lower, I've seen it a little bit higher, but in that 2 to 4%. The second highest is the event experiential component, which you'll see go as high as 10 or even 15%, but averages around 6 or 7, 8%. Right? The highest of those 3 and of the old model was giving. Now, the average nationally is below 6%, but you see some schools in the 30s and 40s and some, no one's, I think 48 was the highest last year. So way higher than the other 2. If you then put in communications and are tracking it in the same level of discipline you're tracking those other 3, it is 2 or 3 times higher than the highest form of engagement you have of anything else you do. And that's communications, and we're talking digital now, so bridging it back to the digital question, to me, it's a must-do for institutions to have a strategy here of how we're going to engage digitally, but also how we're going to track that engagement and connect it to other behaviors and use that data on the back end to get people to move from online engagement. As I'm quoting Andrew Gosen here from my Cornell days, he used to talk about online engagement will lead to offline engagement, which is them showing up at events and volunteering. And I think it's critical that we're doing that work. We have a clear strategy about it, and we're capturing the data in order to measure it in an effective way.
Awesome. Well, as we come to the end of our episode, I know this is a first for you, Max and Renee, but Chris is used to it. We like to do something called Friday Cheers. And since we spent the whole episode talking about technology, our theme is going to be technology. And I'm going to go first here because I had a conversation. I've been talking to her a bit. Her name is Mallory Erickson. She has a brand new tool. It's called Practivated. And I am not sponsored by Practivated. We're not working with them. I think Mallory is a beautiful angel of a human. And Practivated is doing, through AI, training major gift officers on how to have conversations, training volunteer leaders on how to have conversations. Like, she's got this fun little octopus named Tivy that trains for conversations tied to giving. And I think it's brilliant. And I think she's a great working mom who's really smart in the AI space. So I'm a big fan of Practivated. I'm going to keep seeing where she's going with that. So that's my Friday cheers to Mallory at Practivated. And I hope folks will check her out because she's doing some neat work in the AI space. So I'm going to go over to you, Chris. I'm going to jump to Chris and then I'll finish up with our panelists.
Yeah. So mine is an easy one. I mentioned it earlier. Is Ryan Catherwood's article on LinkedIn. If you haven't read the 4 Horsemen of Alumni Engagement, I believe is the title on his LinkedIn post, it is a brilliant post. It's created a lot of dialogue. You have to read it, respond, comment, disagree, add a fifth horseman or whatever. I threw in one from my response today. But I just think it's really relevant in our industry right now to read what he has. And he's been really good about sort of putting out thought pieces like that to get people talking. So kudos to Ryan. He's my cheers. Here's Steve's comment to my fellow presenters today. What you've done with virtual agents is simply brilliant work. But I'll be honest that I am legitimately uncertain about whether I would prefer that kind of experience, much like I almost always use the self-checkout at the grocery store versus speaking with a real human. Being and having a real human connection. I'm sure you've all heard of this before, but I was looking forward to having a little back and forth today to help me find my way. So that was Steve's cheers.
So I just want to comment, Kim, Proctivated, good friends of that team here at Givzey's version 2. So again, I agree with everything you said. Adam always talks about, and I mean, we all know this, but no one goes to school to become a fundraiser. It's just part of your skill set, what you're good at, in your day to day, and you naturally just land in fundraising. And so I think having tools like that is great. But actually, the two that I was going to bring up, really, I use them every single day, and I just wanted to give them a shout out. And major logos, I'm sure you'll know them. Canva has really been stepping up their game, just from like the artificial intelligence running in the background. I mean, anything from just creating presentations, which I think we all know Canva in that way, but really creating project management tools in there, documentations, or documentation for things. But Canva's been great. And then LinkedIn has really stepped up their game with some of the artificial intelligence tools running in that solution as well. And if you're not leveraging LinkedIn to engage with your alumni, find your alumni, see what they're up to, you're really missing out. And I think it's probably pretty old news, but some of their tools now are making LinkedIn like that much better. I am in there every single day.
Two things for me personally, Sora 2, AI generated videos. It's been interesting not only how it lets others express their creativity, but for me personally, engagement I've had with friends and family that use the same tools, really been an interesting dynamic beyond the technical accomplishment. The other one is kind of what you said, Chris, non-technical. There's an article out of Stanford that came out a number of years ago around the strengths of weak ties. That really, really matters, meaning talking about how weak ties, community belonging can help you boost your career and engagement. Highly recommended. This follows a little bit, I think, the LinkedIn study that came out last year showing that weak ties really can help open doors. I recommend that to like everybody on the alumni site. Think about weak ties. That's the key for higher education.
Kim, I'm going to count on you to do the final wrap with your reporter skill set, closing it out. But I'll do a final thank you and hand it off to you. A special thank you to Renee and Max for joining us today for this full hour. Great session. I've loved every minute of it and learned a ton. Thank you again for being here. A special shout out back to Steve too, who attempted, but storms in the Connecticut area prevented him. Says it sends his regards and apologizes. We'll get him back on the podcast at a later date. And then my one last thank you, Ryan, for putting together the great script and the questions that we have here. Kim for co-hosting with me, and the final tip of the hat to our sponsors, Protopia, AlumnIQ, Givzey, version 2, making this all possible. Thank you so much. Kim, give us the wrap.
That's all, folks. We'll see you in 2026.
All right.
Thank you. This was amazing. Good. I really appreciate it. Happy holidays.
All right. Take care, everybody.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Bye now.
Bye-bye.